I ended up the leading coordinator of open science at an entire university. So first I was working and studying open access, among other things, and open access to exactly our open access in our field, Wittgenstein studies. And then my view was kind of broadened, and I ended up working with within a very policy-driven field, which is creating support, developing support, and developing the infrastructures of a university for open science. And now I work as the library director, but the library is the one who coordinates all of the open science endeavors at the university in collaboration with national policy makers and international policy makers and so on. So what I would like to do now is try to kind of connect these two things in some way. So, and also the infrastructures that we already have in Wittgenstein studies, they are immensely important. And I would actually want to talk to not those of you who are already quite tech savvy and are developing these things, but maybe more to those who have not had so much time to think about the infrastructures and what it means and what the demands of them should be. And then I want to try to connect this in some way to open science policy and open science work and the question what it could be for us. In terms of policy making and strategic planning, Wittgenstein studies would be called a special context for policy, and not the broader context. And the questions here have been, how can policy be made to work for the benefit of research in the multitude of different special contexts that the research field actually consists of. And in the policy work, they always know, or we always know, that one size doesn't fit all. And this is a good thing to think about. And at the same time, these policies, they need to tie up with much bigger things. Like in the case of open science, it has to do with, for instance, data flows on an international level. That is, how can we set up the infrastructures in a way which makes details in the special context of research work together. So the policies are not always about what the researchers should do. They are also about that, but they are also about what the organizations should do and what collaborations there should be on an international level. So when I'm done today, I hope that you will understand what I mean by this and why it's important. And then for all of those, as I said, who are already into this, I'm trying to talk to everyone, so bear with me. And I want to talk about why this is important, why it's important, what those of you who work with these infrastructures do, and how you do it, why you do it the way you do it. Okay, what is open science? It's an ideal and it's a program of development for scholarly practices and infrastructure, and a set of policies that inform the actions of scholars and also their organizations, which maintain or are in some way responsible for or in charge of the infrastructures of scholarly work. And this is an umbrella term, and one might even claim that it has a family resemblance structure, but I'll just leave that right there and move on. From the beginning, it was a scholar-led development, so it was not top-down, but it has kind of become this also. It was scholars who saw that scholarship could be carried out in a more transparent and open ways, and that it would benefit scientific endeavors greatly, quality, communication, intersubjectivity, and so on, that it could be cared for and promoted even better than before in a digital age. And these developments have been going on for at least 15 years now, and more than ever, this concept of open science is trending now. Funders of research are demanding measures for increasing the transparency, and universities include it in their strategies, and the policies are becoming more and more concrete. And there is no avoiding open science. I've pasted in the development in the EU-funded research programs, Horizon 2020, that in 2008, open access to publications was a pilot, and in 2014 it became mandatory to deposit, that is to self-archive publications, and then the open research data pilot was a pilot, and nowadays it's required. There was an opt-out in Horizon 2020, but in Horizon Europe, which is the program for funding right now, it's obligatory. And here's an overview of what is open science. It's many things, and I will talk about some of the things that are required by the EU. And why I choose exactly this set of policy is that, or this in this form, is that I think this is what's going to be the everyday normal thing for everyone. So I think these are worth discussing in the context of Wittgenstein studies. Open access is something that most people already do and know about, and open data maybe not so much. This is like a map of all kinds of ideas and things that can be or can be understood to be part of the open science program. The third point I want to talk about is open scholarly culture. Why should we transition to open science in the first place? Well, there are many problems of the science system. I've listed some here, that the publication system is expensive, it's competitive, there are competitive and non-collaborative practices which stand in the way of scientific development. There's a quality and a replication crisis, having to do with, among other things, that the data is not available to check. There are issues with ownership of knowledge and access. The data models, the data about research and the platforms are owned by multinational companies, more and more. Also, the outputs are closed, where they should be available for everyone. And there's issues with the relationship with society, that the research agenda is not always updated to societal needs. So some of the problems listed are problems for the very quality of scientific input, and some for the efficient use of resources to get things done with the available resources, human and material, and some about risk having to do with the ownership of central assets for science. Because science research scholarship is for all of humanity. And it can and is used to profit. It can be and is used to profit, but the development towards privatization needs to be curbed. And these are the Horizon Europe Open Science, that's an missing requirements, that there is responsible management of research data and metadata of all research outputs, publications, data, software, algorithms, protocols, models, workflows, in line with the FAIR principles. That there is open access to research data, as open as possible, as closed as necessary, and research output management, that all projects should write a data management plan, and open access to publications. And I will say more about that. The sector which is most well known is open access to research publications, as I said. But open access does not only entail that the paper is free to read on a researcher's website. It's open and it's for free, but it's not good enough. There are also sustainability demands on this open digital object. That is, also other barriers to access and circulation should be lifted. There cannot be technical barriers such as login or registration, and also there cannot be legal restrictions to the reuse. In other words, the papers must use a Creative Commons license, which allows free circulation online. And furthermore, the digital object shall be available online and searchable in the long run, and hence proper digital archiving is a requirement to ensure that the paper doesn't disappear. And this means also that the digital references need to be sustainable. We need to be able to refer and link to the object that we cite in the long run. And this means that the paper needs to be assigned a persistent identifier, such as DOI, digital object identifier, or another kind of URN, to ensure that the paper is found also when the publisher or others exchange and redesign the website on which the publication is published. Also, the paper should preferably be open with no embargo. And this goes for articles. For books, it's different. For books, 12 months in embargo is allowed according to the planners. The demands on quality open access for journal are collected as the criteria for inclusion in the directory of open access journals, almost 1-to-1, but that's a place to look for journals which fulfill many of these criteria. And also there is a tool called the Journal Checker tool, where you can see which journals fulfill the planners criteria. Or check if your journal doesn't. Maybe there's something you can do. And the books and the book chapters have different criteria because of the differences in publication and business models. Many scholars today also self-archive manuscript versions of their papers in institutional repositories, and this is green open access. This is also a good way to make sure that the material is available in the long run. And it's a valid road to openness in the eyes of most research funders. But what does this open access publication mean from a scholar perspective? From an author perspective, it renders more citations. It's a way to ensure long-term access for readers. For instance, when it comes to books, most books are sold during the first year. And if it's only available in print, it's likely that it can be difficult to get a hold of it, except for from libraries after that. But when the book is open access, it's available in the long run also. It means that there could be readers much later, and readers who would find it much later. So it's very much in the interest of the author also to be read, because I suppose this is the point of publishing. And of course, at the beginning, it feels cumbersome for authors to self-archive, because the authors are often not so aware of the policies of the publishers, that most publishers allow green open access, at least to journal articles. And it can also feel difficult that there are APCs or open access fees. And we hope that soon this will be easier for everyone. Green open access self-archiving, of course, is for free to do. And it might require us or the researchers to rethink his or her publishing habits, perhaps to choose another journal than the ones one is used to submitting the papers to. So these listed here are the requirements for articles and journals. But of course, there's an important difference between fields of research, and in particular, humanities and social sciences, books and book chapters are central publication types. And the planners' recommendations for these are the following: that they should also be open access, and the authors should retain the property rights to make their academic books available open access, and they should have a Creative Commons license and embargo at the maximum 12 months. And also you see that funders should financially support them. So it should not be a problem for the author. The funders which have joined the Coalition S take care of this as part of the funding schemes. It's also important to know that for closed academic books, green open access is usually not a possibility. And that means that to open it, one would have to pay. And this is a lot of money. It can be 14,000 euros for one book, easily. And there are open access book publishers which do not charge the author, but they are so far quite few, and they might not be prestigious in the way that authors would hope. But policy-wise, of course, this text is far from a researcher's everyday. Funding for opening is not available. So here, I want to give you an idea that usually laws for publishing agreements contain a point of reversion or reverting the publishing rights to the author after a certain point of time. So if you have published a book, I would say more than 5 years ago, it makes sense to look at the contract, and maybe if the sales have ceased and a certain number of years have passed, the author can contact the publisher and ask to publish a new imprint. And if it doesn't happen, then the copyright or the publishing rights will revert, in which case the author can republish that book, him or herself. And this, of course, is something that we need to remember when we want the edited works republished openly. But the message is keep an eye on your rights. And speaking of making publications available retroactively, there's more to say. We are celebrating the 70 years of Wittgenstein's death and the opening of the copyright, and of course research funders and the organizations that demand that the researchers make their freshly baked papers openly available. They talk about the stuff that we produce now, but how about all these back issues and the old material, which are so interesting and so important for Wittgenstein scholars, the edited works or posthumous collections. As developed in length in this forthcoming anthology, The Creation of Wittgenstein by Thomas Wallgren, edited by Thomas Wallgren, the editors of Wittgenstein have had a profound impact on how Wittgenstein is and can be understood. And the impact of the editors of these so-called works of Wittgenstein was immense. And this is something that we all know. Also, for the only work published during Wittgenstein's life, the Tractatus, we have had reason to retrace, redo, examine, and consider, among other things, the translations. So, since the sources we choose or declare to have used are or can be crucial for our interpretations in an open science perspective, it is clear that all of these need to be available to all. So, note that I'm not suggesting that the difficult questions of interpretation will be settled with this, but some new possibilities for scholarship will arise, and the barriers are reduced, and it is already being done, as I have also seen today. And meta-studies are possible, potentially also finding the spread or the crucial point for spread of certain misunderstandings. Many interesting topics. So this is really something that needs to be thought about, how to get the range of literature opened. So here, let me point out a feature also of this project, which may escape less tech-savvy scholars and not Michele Lavazza. Thank you for this Wittgenstein project. It looks fantastic to me. And I know that you have thought about this, but the importance of digital sustainability also in these cases, not only for open access publications that are fresh. The material should be searchable, easily findable, and downloadable for text and data mining, and it should be available in the long run also, and preferably also have PIDs for sustainable quoting. So in addition, this means that CRED can be given to those who have produced the material, and this cred can be generated automatically thanks to the DOIs, because those can be followed up automatically on the internet when the material is used. And now an aside to a policy demand. The policy demand of open or fair data is that research data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So the technical standards exist today, and I can say that I have worked with scholars on this, and some of these technical standards are too complicated to use. So we should think that we have to go for fair enough. The data should be maybe not top-notch fair, but as well as we can do it, that maybe we have to start with trying to make it accessible and findable, and then come back to interoperable and reusable, of course, we hope we can work on. The requirement in Horizon Europe is that the underlying data sets are made available. It is what the researcher makes his or her claims based on in an article. And for Wittgenstein scholars, much of this is secondary literature, but also the edited works, all of the material that's already made available. So, and here this textual material becomes a body of items themselves available for research. And we are in a pretty good situation here, because this data is already available to a large extent. It means that for Wittgenstein scholars, I think that they can argue in a data management plan that the data is fair and openly available, and this is good news. So, and the material, of course, is not only the remarks as a, let's see, so if you are a scholar who writes about the Nachlass, you need to access it, but you also should make available what you base your claims on, or be transparent about it. And this can have to do with the practice of quoting. And the material in this case is not only the remarks as a collection of items, it's also the secondary literature. And the point of this transparency is not merely to make it available for scrutiny, but it makes up a body of items themselves available for research. So for ourselves, we can, when we celebrate the 70 years, let's think about that also, that we should not do this with our own material, close it up for 70 years. We should open it today, because it's easier now that we are here, and we can make them stay in circulation. And now, talking about quotation practices, I'd like to talk about the failure that I've experienced myself. And I do this now because I want to shed some light on, or try to talk more about what it means to have structured data. Me and Rune Falk from Bergen in 2015, we did a little study of references and quotations of Wittgenstein when the Wittgenstein archives in Bergen released the data openly. The corpus of Kirchberg contributions from 2001 to 2010, 10 years of Kirchberg conference material. We looked at the references and we looked at the quotes. They are marked up in this material by the Wittgenstein archives in Bergen. And we saw that Wittgenstein references are missing in 28% of the bibliographies of these 520 proceedings papers that we went through. And it means that for a reader, it's not possible to find the exact source. So when there are differences in these sources, you don't know from whence the ideas came in the paper. And this can be a problem, or it can be not so big a problem. But it's worth thinking about. There were many non-standard forms of citations and abbreviations, which meant that it was not possible to, using a computer, find and pick them out in any clear way. So in this short paper we wrote, we had a recommendation to use the standard abbreviations, and there's already a recommendation. It should be there, but it's not. There is a recommendation for standard abbreviations that I would hope that everyone would use. It would help this data to be structured, and it would help the future when we want to do this sort of reception studies, and not use IBID and to use a reference manager, because this standardizes the format of the references, and one that can be used for free is Zotero. And also, when Nahla's material is cited, provide direct links to Wittgenstein source. In this way, we could have a fantastic material. And if you are interested in thinking more about the data futures, the fact today is that much of the data which describes the research in some way, the data about research is in closed databases, and it's being sold back to the universities. And this opencitations.org project, which is also Italian, is very interesting, and it's a way of trying to push back and create a new data set. Or, you know, the impact factors and all of those are based on these closed data sets. So it's in our very interested to do it. When the Kirchberg papers were made available, I thought, fantastic, what a resource. We can look at the reception history, and we can check the popularity of certain remarks and impact of new publications, and maybe citations of different version, and what is it that the researchers actually prefer to read, and so on. But it was available to download, but it was very difficult to analyze precisely because of this, although it was marked up. So here's something that we could do to help ourselves and each other. So why is it important? It's important for working with Wittgenstein material with digital methods. It's no small deal for Wittgenstein research. The but is the structured data. And the further issue is that to harness machine learning or artificial intelligence effectively to do something about this material, it's digital, but it's not structured enough. We need some sort of structure. So that's why I hope that we could think about this, our citations. And what is structured data? I will not try to explain it in a really simple way. For example, when you use an Excel sheet to keep track of a list of anything, references maybe, and perhaps you put the last name in one column, and you put one cell in a separate column and the first name in another column, and in this way you can sort the material. This is the a simple idea of structured data. That's why reference managers are nice, because they will they structure data, and even though it's only in a word file, it's easier to extract it using a machine. So this is something to think about. Using a reference manager is also a way to save a lot of time. You know, it's annoying when you want to submit an article and you have to manually edit the list of references into the correct format. And you don't have to do this if you use a reference manager. You can download the references from other sources and then keep them in your little library there, and then you extract them when you need to, and in the right format that you want to use. So this I would really recommend, and I would hope that in the future this would be a way of making the data more structured. And why do I bring up the whole Kirchberg citation study except for the point about structured data? Well, it's a reminder that some of the tiny things we do in our everyday when we do the research, we're already using digital tools. But with some small adjustments, it could be really much more worthwhile in the long run. So sometimes the devil can be in the details. We are so close. And also remember to contribute your material. As a reminder here, for this study, there are 89 of the authors who the Wittgenstein archives back and tried to contact didn't respond, so their material wasn't included. So please do it. Further open science goals. One is the open research culture. Open research culture. Open science can also concern inclusion. How do you make sure that on a global level, the symposium you arrange can afford, the people can afford, you can afford to arrange can be useful for everyone interested, that those who need to be able to participate in the conversation can actually join it. This symposium is open for participation online, and I'm very happy about it, and I send you my warmest regards for this. But also that the information about the symposium are not put in silos, which email lists often are. And we have a fantastic resource for philosophers, which is the Phil papers, Phil events, this whole cluster of services which can actually make it available and which is free for us all to use. But also recording as is happening and sharing the material to make sure others can see it. Also, open calls for papers can be important for inclusion. Not everyone is allowed to come, or maybe bursaries could be something. How do we think about inclusion to make not only listening possible, but also participating and contributing possible? Also, the Horizon Europe wishes for preprints and early publication, ongoing research work, that this would be more available. But for philosophy, at least, I can say that preprints are not always a possibility. But what one can do is announce that what one is working on, and then publishing it, the announcement somewhere in an open repository. Maybe posting seminar presentations or drafts online can be good, but not always. If there's a blind peer review process in place, this does not always work. So sometimes we can. But also the teaching at the universities or the educational materials, can this be made more openly available? Or is it a one-off situation where only the group in that classroom can ever hear about what happened there? It's valuable work, and it's often also publicly funded. So think about it. Is it possible to open up for others? And how about the course plan? That is the pedagogical work behind the scenes. Is this something that could be shared? Okay, now let me try to round off and say what I hope that the infrastructures can do, and what I hope that all of us as scholars will do, what I have already said. The standards, the open formats, the open licenses are important, and I hope I have managed to tell you something about why. And the sustainable open archiving, and I would also hope that the infrastructures would collaborate, and I know that you do already. All the work also can't be done for free, so if there's possibilities, go try to work together for the funding. And also, what's really important for an open scholarship future is that education for Wittgenstein scholars, there could be quick guides or methods courses, or skill test quizzes, and advocacy for digital methods to help them save time and to be included. And what should a scholar do? I said lots of things. Publish open access, also old works and old books. Use open licenses and all the material that you produce. And participate in the infrastructure work. You can engage your students. I saw that there's a call for the Ludwig Wittgenstein projects. Standardize your quotation practices, and ask libraries and projects to fund common infrastructures when those opportunities appear. And budget for infrastructures in your research project budget. And collaborate and be careful with digital micro initiatives in case they risk not being digitally sustainable and lasting. And count infrastructure work as academic merit when you hire, and submit your data to repositories and infrastructure projects, philpapers.org, and so on, and open up your journals and work for an open research culture. And what did I say? I tried to say that open access is key, that there is a way to argue that Wittgenstein scholars have a really good possibility to fulfill all the open data requirements, and how important certain standards and structured data are for open scholarship in the long run. And with this, I think Wittgenstein studies are already well on their way to fulfilling all these open science requirements of Horizon Europe and prepared for digital scholarship. Thank you.